All right, everyone, talk about the insult of the political cycle. Joe Biden apparently he called Sanders up recently and made it clear to him, and no one's, and he doesn't actually say this, but it's pretty certain what he means, which is basically, look, Bernie, I've won. Get the fuck out of my way. Apparently, Biden told him that he was going to begin vetting potential VPs, running mates, as well as looking at who to put in various cabinet positions. Now, part of this is probably Biden's way of saying, look, you did well enough, so I'd be nuts if you weren't on my team, so you want to be Secretary of State or something like that, which, by the way, would be hilarious and probably collapse his campaign. I think Biden's doomed just because he's promised, he's started off, he's not even nominee yet. He's beginning to piss off the Bernie fans by insinuating that the race shouldn't continue when he hasn't technically clinched. That's a bad idea strategically. Even though it projects strength to the neoliberals, it pisses off the Bernie bros who are convinced that they've been cheated now 2 elections in a row anyway. So that's a problem. He also swears up and down that he's going to have a VP who's female. The problem is that the short list of people that he could choose from is incredibly weak. That's why they lost. I don't think Warren is even in the running. That would be a disaster, having Warren. I would lean towards saying the safest bet is Klobuchar. Klobuchar is the least problematic of a slew of people that are uniquely problematic. If I was Biden, I would have chosen Buttigieg. I would have gone with him as my VP. Of course, that would have pissed off some of the Bernie fans too. I think that all likelihood is Kamala is number 1 on the list. I think it would be a terrible idea. Seeing her try to debate Mike Pence, by the way, would be hilarious. She's a terrible debater generally. She's not that well-spoken, especially when confronted. I guess they're counting on the fact that this election will be wonky due to a pandemic and they won't have to do too many public events. Like, they'll just be able to talk online scripted and they won't ever have to be impromptu and off the cuff. Because that was like Hillary Clinton's big problem, was a lot of the time she fucked up is when somebody would question her out of the blue and say something that got in under her skin. Well, if that's impossible, if the only people you're talking to are corporate media heads, they're not going to do that to the Dem candidates because they want them to win. They'll softball them 100% of the time. I think Biden is counting on this election being abnormal to have a chance to win. That being said, of course, there would still be debates. And if they tried to stop the debates, Trump would definitely have something to say about that. I think there's a 99% chance he wins. But Biden at this point, he's justified. I'm not saying he's not justified to be pissed off at Bernie. He is. Bernie Sanders has already lost. It is no longer numerically feasible for him to possibly have more delegates than Joe Biden. He would need to win all remaining states by something like 60+%. And he's riding 20 points behind, or more, depending on the day, in the national poll. He's been, in an all-new polling that we've seen since Super Tuesday, Bernie Sanders has come in sucking hind tit in every single state. He's 20 points behind in New York. He's 20 points behind in Wisconsin. It's a remarkably consistent pattern here now, isn't it? What'll happen is that Joe Biden will clinch. There probably won't be a contested convention, and anyway, there probably won't be a convention at all. At this point, there may not be a physical convention in Milwaukee or anywhere else. Maybe they hold it in the middle of the woods. They go to Bohemian Grove, and they'll hold a live televised conference in front of the Big Owl. It's going to be weird. Sanders can't win, but his fans are convinced that he can still do it. Oh, they're trying to get Bernie to drop out because Joe Biden has sexual assault allegations against him, and they're terrified. They're not terrified. There aren't enough undecided voters left. Look, anyone who would be fazed by #MeToo bullshit from the 90s a la Joe Biden has already seen 1,000 clips of him sniffing small children's hair, groping old women, and doing weird shit around females. We know he's a bit on the rapey side. He's like a schmoozy Bill Clinton sort of character. We're already aware of this fact. People have already looked at that and have already decided whether they find it palatable or not. Now, this will hold Biden back in the general, because Trump is nuts enough to actually exploit that fact and do like a creepy Joe sort of thing. He's probably willing to do that. It'll be funny, by the way. The idea, though, that Bernie Sanders hasn't been simply rejected by the Democratic voting base is asinine. The idea that Bernie would have won if. No, he wouldn't have. There aren't enough people within the Democratic Party, especially of the right ages. You've seen that there's a huge turnout differential when you're looking at the lopsidedly younger Bernie voters. You're looking at a situation where there aren't enough people who proclaim themselves Democrats, take a Dem ballot and vote in the primaries to accept socialism. It's less than 50%. In fact, it's only about 40%. About 60% of all Democrats reject that concept. The majority of Democrats, including the majority of fairly young Democrats, you have to go down to the under 30 demographic to find the two groups of people, the teeny boppers and early 20-somethings and the mid to late 20-somethings. Those are the only two groups, specifically among Democrats, by the way, not independents or Republicans, the only two groups in the country, statistically, when you fix for political association and age, that support socialism more than capitalism. So it's a small minority even within the Dem Party. If you were to take that platform and put it on a national campaign, if Bernie Sanders were the nominee and he continued to use the term socialism and push for what he pushes for, which is massive taxation and massively expanded state power, he would lose by a landslide. He'd probably lose 8-2 among independent voters. That means that the Republicans would have sky-high turnout, both because they approve of Trump and because they hate socialism more. Sky-high Republican turnout, large turnout among independents, largely against Sanders, and a Dem coalition that would be fractured because the business Democrats wouldn't be aboard. If you thought that the exodus of business Dems in the Rust Belt towards Trump, which flipped several states, was big before, just try running a socialist. Especially one who's almost 80 and has health issues. What Biden is telling him is you have lost. Stop fucking whining. Drop the fuck out. Biden, though, is intelligent enough not to directly confront Bernie Sanders. So he just decides to leak to the press, oh yeah, I talked to Bernie the other day. I said I was going to start vetting candidates. What a goddamn backhand. It's a huge political backhand. This is his way of trying to challenge Bernie to drop out without actually saying it, to try to keep his fans from going completely berserk. And if I were Joe Biden at this point, I would just, hint at it even more strongly and say, well, I'm not saying that it's impossible for him to win, but, I've already chosen a running mate. I'm not going to tell you who it is till the convention, though, whether we have it or not. That's what he should do. Or he should just do a live stream. Just start and sell the top 10 reasons Bernie Sanders can't win. It'd be so funny. The Democrats largely, though, they're terrified that the Bernie fans will revolt and that they won't back the nominee. They're right, actually, to do this. However, you got to understand one thing. Even if a lot of Bernie's fans refuse to support the Dem nominee, you got to understand that Bernie Sanders fans, again, lopsidedly are quite young, and the young vote at the lowest levels anyway. The idea, by the way, that other than that lower turnout there'd be any effect, like the idea that some Gen Z far leftist who likes socialism is going to, protest vote for Donald Trump, I don't think that's likely to happen. I don't think that's likely at all. Maybe a very small minority of them. It was funny in 2016 they tried to blame Bernie voters for losing the election. It's like there weren't enough Bernie fans then, and there certainly aren't enough now, unless it was extremely close. But in most states it wasn't. There wouldn't be enough Bernie voters to have swung Michigan or Pennsylvania or anything, or even Wisconsin. Maybe Florida. Wasn't it within 5,000-6,000 votes there? It was fucking crazy. I don't think it'll be close this time, though. The Democrats have come too close to embracing socialism to possibly, I think, be palatable to the Floridian voting base. I think that Trump will win by at least 2 or 3 points there this year. I don't think it'll be nearly as close as before. That's about all. Peace out.